ChatGPT isn't actively looking for a gap in a market. It's not living an experience to therefore feel a problem that it's then compelled to solve. Hi, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Julian Hall, a multi-award winning entrepreneur based here in London, better known for my work in supporting kidpreneurs and young entrepreneurs across the country and across the world through my social enterprise called Ultra Education and through our newly launched e-commerce marketplace for kidpreneurs called yobuddy.com. So please do go check those out. Now, for the last 6 or 7 years, I've been talking online and offline at conferences and events about the fourth industrial revolution and the future of jobs. So the World Economic Forum has produced a number of reports on this new revolution, which is powered by automation and technology. But more importantly, it's talked about the number of jobs which will be displaced and will simply not exist. And in running an organization which supports children and young people, I'm interested in what the future of work looks like. And in those reports, it would talk about at length the types of jobs which will no longer exist and the types of work that children are being taught about today, which simply will not be in our future economies. Now, when I would talk about this topic 6 or 7 years ago, we knew it was coming, we just didn't know exactly when. Now, unless you've been hiding under a rock, you'll have heard of OpenAI's ChatGPT, which has changed the way in which we look at jobs, work, and skills. Unlike previous uses of AI, so let's say Amazon, for example, who would use artificial intelligence to help product recommendations and help to optimize and automate their supply chain and warehousing, OpenAI's ChatGPT is defined as a more generative AI, together with many other solutions, which means that these type of AI tools can be used to generate text, video, images, and other media types from a simple text prompt, which is now an absolute first. We weren't able to do this 5 or 10 years ago, but in the last year or so, with more rapidly developing tools, we now have these apps and websites at our fingertips, which are allowing us to come up with text responses, amazing art, videos, and even audio. So the natural concerns from us human beings are ChatGPT taking away our jobs. But like most of you watching this video, we live in the real world day to day. And to be honest, ChatGPT today has not killed many of the jobs which people are still being paid for. Now, there are lots of videos online, particularly YouTube, which at length discuss the types of jobs which ChatGPT is going to wipe out. But in today's video, I'm going to give you 5 job types which ChatGPT will not be wiping out anytime soon. And if you stick with me till the end of the video, I'm going to give you the most obvious example of a career which ChatGPT simply isn't going to come anywhere close to. Now, before we talk about some of these career types, let's talk about technology. Now, we all are heavy users of technology on a day-to-day basis for work, for pleasure. And in the last 10 years or so, there have been loads of apps which have really helped us to do our work more easily. One of these tools is something called Canva, which I feel like I've been using ever since they started. But Canva is actually 10 years old. If you check it out on Wikipedia, they've been going for quite a long time. And it's only really in the last few years that you could honestly say that Canva has, for the lower end of the market, displaced a number of graphic design services that you would have normally gone to. So if you were creating flyers, posters, even low-end logos, you may use Canva instead of going to a professional designer. However, if you go higher up the food chain and you start to work with medium, large, and corporate entities, trust me, they're not using Canva to generate the idea. They may use Canva as a tool, but professional graphic designers at that level, if we talk about corporate level and just below, will not be using Canva templates, because those companies are going to need something which is completely unique. And often a lot of the ideas that graphic designers will come up with may start off from a hand-drawn image, which they then turn into a graphic and they develop it on from there. So I say that to say that even from the outset, Canva had the capability of wiping out graphic design jobs, but it's taken 10 years before it's made a dent in the market. It's not replaced every graphic designer on the planet, but yes, it has absolutely made a dent in the lower end of the market for sure. Now, I know you're thinking AI is going to change things more quickly than that, and perhaps you're right. But here is the first job type which today ChatGPT and generative AI is not going to replace. Number one are bid writers. So people have said that you can use ChatGPT to create proposals and things like that. But as an organization, we use bid writers, tender writers on a very regular basis. And the skill set you require in such a highly competitive market, ChatGPT isn't a tool that can generate generate a bid response for you from scratch. Because in order for you to respond to a bid or a tender, there's a lot of documentation to read through. There are lots of guidelines to follow. You need to create a story, a narrative. You've got to pull from all angles of your organization to deliver a compelling case and response to a tender. It's just simply not something that ChatGPT can do on its own. Now, granted, a copywriter or a bid writer may take some aspects of their copy and put it into ChatGPT to use it as a tool to maybe shorten it, make it more expressive, but none of the bid writers that I know would use ChatGPT simply because it's easier for them to do the work than to put all of the reference data into ChatGPT for it then to come up with a response. Because there is an art to storytelling which is required often in bids, in tenders, which ChatGPT simply isn't going to have the ability to do. I would agree that ChatGPT can be used as a great resource tool. It can help you to structure a particular piece of content, but the work that is needed in high ticket sales proposals isn't something that ChatGPT has the necessary insight into your business, the necessary insight into the bid, because a lot of this requires context, it requires often lived experience, it requires a professional understanding of that space, particularly if you are working in a niche. And again, you feed all of that into ChatGPT, you're not really saving much time. It's easier to generate that copy yourself. Following on from storytelling, job type number 2 is that of an author. Now, I know you can ask ChatGPT to write a poem about maybe 2 birds who live in Jamaica, who then become robots and decide that they want to create a spaceship so they can fly higher and explore space. I'm sure if we put that right now, which we'll do, into ChatGPT, it will give us an amazing poem.
In the land of vibrant hues and sun-kissed sand, where Jamaica breezes caress the land, 2 birds once dwelled, their feathers bright in the heart of Jamaica, the home of their lives.
However, if you think about some of the classic books of our time, so I'm an entrepreneur, loads of entrepreneurs have read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. ChatGPT could not write that book. If you think about some of the amazing autobiographies that exist out there, let's say Malcolm X, ChatGPT could not have written that book because Think and Grow Rich was exploring a brand new concept, a number of ways in which you can become more successful. And these ideas were groundbreaking for the time. They weren't pulled from the internet. It wasn't pulled from a large language model. It was pulled from a human being's ideas and experiences that they then put together in the form of words to deliver to the rest of humanity. If we look at the autobiography of Malcolm X, again, that was drawn from an individual's life. ChatGPT could make up the archetype of, say, a black activist and come up with a character and all the rest of it, but it isn't the same. It's not based on a real person. And to be honest, my niece has just recently written a book called Breathe, and it's a story with a bunch of characters that go on an adventure, and there's lots of different dynamics to the book. I'd be more interested in reading a book which was written by a human being, because I know that that human being is pulling from their own experiences, their own observation of life to be able to develop a story. Whereas I know that ChatGPT is pulling it from a data set. It's a very, very different offering. So if you are an author, I think your job is still safe because we still want to hear from human beings, and I don't think that's going anywhere soon. Job type number 3 is related, and that is a screenwriter. So if you think of a play such as Hamilton or The Book of Mormon or Wicked, or a very recent play that was shown in London called Four Black Boys, similarly, the concept of those plays are so unique and so classic that ChatGPT could come up with a version of those plays. But for some of the biggest plays in the world, they came from a moment of inspiration. They came from a moment of insight. They came from a trigger from the screenwriter, from the playwright, who was then inspired and motivated to create a piece of art that could be delivered to the world on stage through theatre. Now, I'm sure if you gave ChatGPT an idea to run with to come up with an entire play, it would probably do a good job. Would it create a classic play? That I'm not sure of. And today, particularly in terms of content, we are looking for for classic pieces of content. We are looking for the best of the best. I don't know about you, but over the period of lockdown, it felt like a lot of the media houses were pumping out content because they knew that we were sitting at home and didn't have much else to do. But a lot of that content for me was subpar. It wasn't akin to a classic. A lot of that content didn't have much replay value. And who knows, maybe early versions of ChatGPT did write some of them. But because we're used to digesting content in so many different ways, and theatre, as an example, has been going for hundreds of years, there was a deeper level of creativity, which I think is the key word here, that ChatGPT isn't able to produce. Job type number 4 is the work of coaches, mentors, and therapists. Now, I was at a talk last week about AI in e-commerce, and I was sitting next to a therapist, and I was talking about the fact that I'm going to be making a video on 5 job types that ChatGPT won't kill, and one of them was going to be about therapists. And so we got into a discussion, and she was saying that when she listens to her clients in front of her, she's not listening to the words they say. She's picking up on their body language, on their facial expressions, on the emotion that comes through their eyes, on what they are saying behind the words, and what she has built up over a number of sessions. She was explaining that her job as a therapist is to collect a bunch of physical data from that human being and immediately be able to respond in a way that can move that person along their journey. It isn't generative in the sense that somebody types in a problem without context, without understanding the lived experience of that individual, without being able to see their facial expressions, without understanding their past history, whatever trauma, whatever medical conditions they might have. All of that data is something that a trained professional as a therapist would consider before providing a response. And again, that's not something that ChatGPT has the capability of doing because it's not looking at the individual. It doesn't understand the background or the context to be able to provide a therapeutic response. Similarly, if you are a coach of any description, if you are a football coach, for example, you will be drawing on your experience of playing football and maybe coaching lots of other young footballers. If you are a mentor in business circles, essentially you are pulling from your experience as a business person to be able to advise, relay, and guide someone along their own personal business journey. ChatGPT doesn't have any of that. It doesn't have any of that experience. It doesn't have any of that context. It doesn't have any of the background, the personal background that goes into coloring the advice that you might give somebody who's sitting in front of you, asking whether you should do this business or that business, whether you should hire this person, whether you should take on this supplier, whether you should go down this particular market. Because if you think about it, ChatGPT will give quite an academic answer when it comes to business, whereas a business coach may look past the business aspect of that person and look at the human aspect of them and ask them what are their personal motivations behind what they are about to do in their business. Because we recognize as humans that we're not just a business person or a mother or a wife or a brother. We're all of those things wrapped up in one, which means that it's a lot more difficult for a machine to be able to provide the example. But if a human being understands all of that context, then they can layer a much more sensible response to the person that's sitting in front of them. And when we're speaking about experience, job type number 4, which I don't think ChatGPT is going to kill anytime soon, is that of comedians. We know that some of the best comedians in the world are literally pulling from their own life experience, and they are pulling from their own observation of life. And that's what makes it funny, because it's something that we can all relate to. Now, I'm sure ChatGPT could tell us a joke or two, which will show up on the screen now. And I'm sure maybe those jokes will be funny, but ChatGPT isn't going to be able to do a Netflix special. ChatGPT isn't going to displace Dave Chappelle, for example, because the greatest comedians of our time are recounting their own life experiences and providing an optic for us, which is humorous. Comedians are able to use the art of storytelling, the art of pause, the art of responding to the hecklers in the crowd. They are able to alter their pace. They are able to perform on a stage. They are able to deliver to a small audience, to a large audience. All of these perhaps soft skills are what makes a successful comedian who they really are. And number 5. The very last career option for this list anyway, that ChatGPT isn't going to kill anytime soon, is that of an entrepreneur. Now, We define an entrepreneur as someone who does what they love and they make money from it. That's how we would explain it to a 7-year-old. ChatGPT isn't motivated by passion, isn't motivated by love. ChatGPT is motivated to find the right answer based on a huge data set of billions of tokens, small bits of information that it's pulling to provide a prediction or a forecast to what it believes is the closest, most relevant answer that you're looking for. Steve Jobs famously said, if you do what you love, you will never work a day in your life.
I loved what I did. You've got to find what you love. And that is as true for work as it is for your lovers.
Jack Ma, on the topic of education, has said time and time again that children should be taught about creativity, they should be taught about being good humans, they should be taught about music, about art.
What's the things that we have to teach that the kids, that to be more creative, innovative, that do the things the machine cannot do?
All of these things which differentiate us from a machine. Often entrepreneurs are looking for a gap in the market based on an experience that they've had or an experience which they've observed. ChatGPT isn't actively looking for a gap in a market. It's not living an experience to therefore feel a problem that it's then compelled to solve. All of those parts along the journey I've just described are human in nature and, dare I say it, emotional in nature. And essentially a lot of entrepreneurs find that the work that they're doing is connected to their purpose, and often that purpose is often to help people have a better experience of life. ChatGPT isn't driven by anything per se, it is a machine. It isn't waking up thinking, how can I improve my own existence, or therefore how can I improve the existence of other people? Now, can ChatGPT help to flesh out an idea? Could it help to put a framework? Could it help you to do some research, put some planning? Absolutely. It can be used as a tool to build on the ideas and the passion and the purpose that provide the foundation for many successful entrepreneurial endeavors. Now, if you do a search for many of the roles that I've mentioned, and we'll throw them up in the screen, for the amount of jobs which are currently available for those roles, you will see that they are in the hundreds, if not thousands. So going with the narrative that ChatGPT has taken all of our jobs and it's killed off a whole bunch of industries simply today is not true. What makes the discussion an interesting one is because we don't know the impact. If we pull on that thread, we don't know where it's going to go. But I strongly believe that the 5 careers which I've just given you, because they are so intrinsically tied to us being human, will mean that ChatGPT is less likely to wipe them out. Will they put a dent in some of them? Perhaps. Will they wipe them out? Probably not. Now, for the technologists out there, I know you're probably going to be in the comments debunking particularly my view on whether or not AI, not necessarily ChatGPT, can replace a coach, a mentor, or a therapist. Now, I have a background in technology, and I'm sure we've seen some of the instances before where we know that there is tech available which can monitor your facial expressions, which can understand your background of life because it's picking up so much data about us. So you could argue that the technology exists, if it's pieced together, could sit in front of an individual based on its data it's tracked about you, can know more about you than you know about yourself, can look at your facial expressions and can hear what you have to say, and then provide an effective therapeutic or mentor-like response. Now, I don't think that's around the corner. It's probably not 5 years away, more like 10 to 20 years away. But here's the question. Even if there was a humanoid device which could sit in front of you and scan based on the data it has from you and look at your facial expressions and even feel your heartbeat. If that machine, if that humanoid could provide you with advice, the question is, would you want it to do that? Or would you want to get advice from a real quote-unquote human? So it's less about whether or not technology could do it, it's whether or not we want technology to deliver that service for us. Now, this isn't one that was on the list, but if you think about a chef who is working at a restaurant. Now, technically, and I'm sure somebody's out there working on an automated robot that could chef up the kitchen and create any kind of cuisine that you would desire. But the question is, if you go to a restaurant and you are eating Mexican cuisine, Caribbean cuisine, Chinese, Indian, whatever it might be, do you want your meal to be cooked by a robot, or do you want it to be cooked by a human being? And that, my dear friends, will determine whether or not ChatGPT will wipe out a number of jobs in various industries, because it's going to be down to what the consumer wants and prefers, as opposed to what technology can provide. But what do you guys think? Are there jobs which today in 2023 ChatGPT has completely eliminated? And are there any other job types which you think ChatGPT won't be wiping out anytime soon? See you on the next video. Ultra and out.